Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain, and I want to welcome you to this presentation on unlocking the people potential in supply chain, presented by Gartner. Quick reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, supply chain productivity is on the decline. Peak human potential has yet to be reached. To set themselves up for long-term success, organizations today must make investments to drive productivity and enable sustainable growth in their supply chains. So today, we're going to discuss how supply chains can harness the collective potential of the individual, the community, and technology to drive productivity, business growth, and the achievement of enterprise objectives. I want to tell you first, though, about the Gartner Supply Chain Symposium and Expo, two events, May 5th through 7th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and May 19th through 21st in Barcelona, Spain. Here is where you can rethink supply chain, learn alongside CSCOs and supply chain executives for pragmatic advice and future-focused insight. Be sure and be there. You can learn more by going to gartner.com/conf/SC and register with the code GartnerSCB25 for an exclusive discount. Do not miss that. With that, I want to introduce my speaker for today. She is Danielle Torgerson, Senior Principal Analyst with Gartner, specializing in talent and enabling strategies. She helps Gartner clients to design and execute their supply chain transformation, talent strategies, and change initiatives. Danielle is passionate about creating equitable and fulfilling work experiences so that companies can achieve their mission-critical priorities. So with that, I want to turn the presentation over to Danielle Torgerson. Danielle, take it away.
Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate the introduction. And as we get started here, I do want to recognize that today we are in a very complex and volatile operating environment. And the reality is, chief supply chain officers and supply chain leaders like all of you are under pressure to drive productivity and top-line growth. From what my colleagues and I see in our research and client interactions at Gartner, productivity will be the key to defining value from supply chains of the future. And there is opportunity for supply chain organizations to reach new productivity heights. This is exciting, and that opportunity is in the space of people productivity. So, CSCOs must develop strategies and new ways of working to unlock the people potential in supply chain. Nonetheless, this is a huge challenge for most. Gartner Global Labor Market survey data shows us that only a quarter of supply chain employees are highly engaged. And although slightly up from previous quarters, we see here that only 17% of these people are willing to go above and beyond in their jobs. And in the next year, nearly 1/3 of supply chain employees intend to leave their current jobs, of which 62% of these people want to leave their existing place of work. So for CSCOs and their organizations, turnover risks remain high. The workforce is disengaged and fatigued. And because of all this, growth in global labor force productivity is at its lowest point in decades. Take a moment, let that sink in. The productivity we get from our people in supply chain is at its lowest point in decades. This means that increases in labor productivity that we typically have gained through investments in mechanization or information technology have stalled. Now, although productivity can be difficult to explain, difficult to measure, and as the past couple of decades show here, difficult to improve, productivity does play an important role in driving innovation and sustaining growth. So this possesses a vital question for CSCOs and people like you to consider. have we reached our peak human productivity? Have we reached our full human potential? Well, the data says that we have, but there are some gaps in the bigger productivity story that suggest otherwise. Let's look here. Over the past 100 years, there's no doubt our technology capabilities have advanced. We've come a long way from the early part of the 20th century with widespread adoption of the telephone, followed by widespread adoption of the internet, to the early 2000s, when we experienced innovation in cloud computing and data storage. And now every day we witness more developing innovation around machine learning, AI, and Gen AI capabilities. So the technology productivity story has progressed, and as a result, the supply chain productivity story has also advanced. Just reflect. Think how far supply chain has come. It's been 100 years since we started using diesel vehicles and warehouse pallets to move product more easily. In the 1950s, we standardized containers, allowing for the distribution of goods by rail, road, and sea to happen more easily. In the 1970s, we experienced the third industrial revolution. Then in the 1980s, we witnessed the rise of globalization as developing countries expanded into global markets. So supply chain has become stronger, faster, and more agile. But as we look back and reflect, it's no secret our investments in technology advancements, supply chain processes, and innovation have far succeeded our investments in our people. Look here. Look closely. The people productivity story shows some alarming gaps. In past decades, generations of workers have experienced incremental change to where, when, and how we all work together. People, especially in supply chain, tend to be seen as interchangeable. Our talent strategies often lack ownership. They get deprioritized and are overlooked altogether in some cases. It took a global pandemic and scarcity of labor for leaders and their organizations to prioritize people and to put their needs and well-being first. And since, the workforce has demanded that we work differently, that we reinvest in people, and we reset how we work. So although people productivity has stalled at this moment in time, imagine what productivity we could gain in supply chain if we equally invested in people and how we all partner, collaborate, and work together. Our research shows that we have yet to reach our peak human potential. But to break through the productivity growth barrier, we need to invest in leading people to extract value from investments that we make in plant, equipment, and technology. That means if you believe your people are your organization's most valuable asset, and that the whole of your supply chain is greater than the sum of its parts, then you and your organization can still reach greater productivity heights. And it starts here. It begins today with a shift in mindset. To unlock the people potential in supply chain, CSCOs and supply chain leaders must shift their focus from humans as an efficiency opportunity or a cost to be controlled, to rather focusing on human beings as an investment in productivity. Now, Gartner 2023 Future of Supply Chain Research finds that high-performing supply chain organizations are already investing in their people at a greater magnitude than low performers. High performers and leading organizations in Gartner Supply Chain Top 25 are more consistently investing in people-centric strategies to drive higher engagement from their workforce. They are also more focused on productivity strategies than efficiency strategies to sustain the growth of their supply chain. So, to change our outcomes, we must recognize that people are amplifiers of supply chain's digital and physical assets. Because each individual we hire, the communities that we build inside and outside of our supply chain, and the technology we implement contribute more together than they do apart. Supply chain's people potential will be unlocked when CSCOs and individuals like you work together to harness the collective potential in supply chain. We need to amplify the impacts of talent's knowledge, skills, and abilities. Harnessing the collective potential means that we work together to make better use of all the innovations coming from our diverse people, teams, technology, and operations. And with this renewed mindset and motivation, organizations will be better positioned to unlock the people potential within.
Hey, I'm just popping in for a moment to remind you that you can meet Danielle as well as the whole team of Gartner analyst experts at the Gartner Supply Chain Symposium and Expo, May 5th through 7th, 2025 in Orlando, and May 19th through 21st in Barcelona. Go to the URL gartner.com/conf/SC to learn more and to register. Register with the code GartnerSCB25 for an exclusive discount. Don't miss that event. It's going to be great.
All right. I know that harnessing the collective potential in supply chain sounds like a lot of work, and it is. It requires you and your team's effort. There are plenty of people, though, who have skills and abilities that are not fully being appreciated and potentially utilized by our supply chains. And we cannot continue to burn out high-performing, high-potential talent because we need their motivation, their institutional knowledge, and passion to help us progress. So with the collective approach, CSCOs can unlock individual potential, community potential, and the technological potential in supply chain. And it starts here. Today, we might think about how we imagine if we can tap into the unique passions, expertise, and strengths of all the diverse talents in our teams. What if you think differently about who, when, and how people can make a positive impact? Let's look here. Today, CSCOs can gain access to valuable and unique skills that exist but are potentially being overlooked or underutilized by just reimagining roles that people play within our supply chain. Now, I will tell you, I have the pleasure of working with many supply chain organizations across industries and oceans. And in some cases, we have put our people in supply chain into boxes. And we need to take them out of those rigid frames so that they can engage, innovate, and perform their best work. To do this, we may have to reshape traditional job descriptions to provide greater opportunity and flexibility in where, when, what, and how work is done. Now, to unlock individual potential, we'll need to assess individual and team performance and competencies. We'll have to think more creatively about how we leverage our people and their unique strengths, and then we'll need to partner with talent and teams to align motivations, passions, and interests to fuel performance and potential. When we enable flexibility beyond when and where people work, our research at Gartner shows that organizations experience a 40% increase in their percentage of high performers. Now I get it. Reimagining roles takes time. It requires our imagination, but it also requires that we think more like human leaders. Now, traits like authenticity, empathy, and adaptability have been listed among the key qualities of great leaders in the past, but today's environment has made them imperative. And human leaders get more positive results. Our research here shows that human leaders improve employee intent to stay by 12%. They also increase employee engagement by 37%, and they improve employee feelings of well-being by 30%. When employees are happier, feeling well, and they are highly engaged, they improve their team's performance by up to 27%. Now and in the coming years, CSCOs will need to be and build more human leaders. Now, human leaders demonstrate authenticity by acting with purpose and establishing an understanding and an acceptance with each individual. We do this by modeling and enabling true self-expression to promote flexible and inclusive environments. Human leaders also practice empathy. As the lines between work and life blur, we will need to make necessary adjustments to support each employee's work and life needs, and we'll need to adapt by providing the type of leadership, support, and recognition that each individual values and requires to be successful. Now, individuals also have a natural affinity to collaborate and to work together. Every day, we witness peers, partners, and communities of people coming together with new ideas and solutions. So my question now is, what if we could also break down barriers and silos in our supply chains to work together more seamlessly? What if we banded together to reach our community potential? Well, today, when we look at organizations, organizational design is a crucial topic for supply chains. In our research, 90% of supply chain leaders are currently executing supply chain reorganizations or planning to do so in the next year. Now, we know that no supply chain org structure is perfect by any means, but based on our research in this space, CSCOs should redesign their org structures with the goals of achieving balance, strength, and speed. We see that designing structures for balance, strength, and speed are essential as they directly enable business goals, as well as they ensure that individuals, teams, and our supply chain communities are set up for success. By rethinking your current org structure, we can better leverage and enable high-performing teams, communities, and networks to come together. With different types of teams and communities coming together, we can also leverage our diverse perspectives, our connections, and our relationships more easily. We see here that CSCOs will also need to look within the organization and assemble a mix of self-directed process teams, tiger teams, and agile teams to build solutions across structures and targeted operational needs. We should use things like crowdsourcing, change networks, and communities of practices to build on the collective intelligence of broader networks so that we can mobilize people to action to unlock the community potential. And with these teams of people and strong communities in place, we will be better positioned to listen, learn from, and play to the strengths of others in order to drive productivity gains. Now, for people to work together more cohesively through new teams that collaborate across reporting lines, decisions must be shifted to those best suited to make them. To unlock community potential, decision-making must be connected to stakeholders, must also be contextualized in the extended supply chain network, and it must be continuous to meet the speed and changing dynamics of our businesses' operating environments. CSCOs will need to move away from the traditional decision-making approach of command and control that we're comfortable with, and we'll have to embrace a decision-making approach that is more connected, contextual, and continuous. We will need to understand the impacts of decisions on key stakeholders. We'll need to align decision-making authority to those communities, teams, and individuals best suited and equipped to understand the dynamics and impacts of those decisions. And then we'll need to use automation, analytics tools, and our decision-making frameworks to enable effective response. These intentional and deliberate decision-making practices will help us to unlock the people potential in supply chain. All right, we've addressed how to unlock our individual potential and how to unlock our community potential in supply chain. Let's now look at how to address and unlock our technological potential. Because technology has and will continue to play an important role in and beyond the supply chain. But we do see that investments in supply chain technology and innovation are expected and will only increase in coming years. However, Gartner research finds that nearly 70% of CSCOs believe their organization's current digital investments are underperforming against expected outcomes. Now, for CSCOs and their supply chain leadership teams, turning this number around is imperative because in the current operating environment, digital investments and the workforce are tied at the top as the number one strategic business priority for boards of directors. Yes, the technology productivity story continues to advance, but there needs to be a plan for where, when, and how to apply it to our work to drive greater human productivity and better business results. To unlock people potential in supply chain, CSCOs should think critically about technology, the role it plays in their organization, and its potential to deliver both incremental and transformational change. When thinking about technology, I encourage you to use this framework to reimagine how humans and technology reach their full potential together. CSCOs and people like you will need to understand where in the organization the workforce provides a competitive advantage, or where it is a cornerstone to the organization's success, and where the organization is more of a tool or interchangeable with technology. Then CSCOs can evaluate people's ability and appetite to engage in change by determining if incremental technology change is enough or if full-scale transformation is what's needed to make a positive impact. And then we can ask ourselves, are we ready? Are we capable of taking that type of change on now? Or are we overloaded? These questions are important for CSCOs to ask as they redesign how humans and technology work together. Because depending on where we're at today and the decisions we're making, our organizations are already on a path to one of the four futures that you see here. In some spaces, we are on a path to comprehensive process automation and/or collaborative human-machine teams. And in other areas of our supply chain or our organization, we might be moving more towards a hyper-augmented human or deploying all known robobosses. But whichever the case may be, the question we pose is whether that's the future that serves your strategy and ambitions best. Does that future fit your business's strategic goals? Well, to unlock future technological potential, CSCOs and supply chain leaders will need to determine their supply chain's future path. They need a strategy and execution plan in place for human technology collaboration. And this plan must be user or people-centric, because whatever the tool or capability is, if your people don't use it to the optimum, we'll never get the value that it is designed for and hoped to deliver. Instead, we need to invest in teams dedicated to driving the design and adoption of new technologies. We want to look to develop resources as well as experiences necessary to ensure that new skills are built, new work rhythms are developed and adhered to, and then we want to look to embed digital tools and data into the fabric of our supply chain by embracing both ideation and creativity. Now, when we get here, we also need CSCOs and the supply chain organization to embrace a future of reciprocal human-machine augmentation, where we continuously share and exchange knowledge between humans and machines to increase their collective ability and to make better business decisions together. Consider how you can use crowdsourcing to combine the insights of humans with the analytics of machines to improve decision quality. Think how you can use process mining to have machines identify automation opportunities while having humans capture domain knowledge that can teach the machines. And develop data literacy by teaching staff to understand and speak data and analytics. This is how we continuously improve and drive productivity improvements at every stage of the game while generating and creating value for the business. As we close on our time together today, remember that we've yet to reach our peak human potential, but unlocking the people potential in supply chain will require a collective effort and approach. Supply chain will reach new productivity heights when we tap into the capabilities of everyone on our team through human leadership. When we rethink how we mobilize people to action and empower them to make good, quality decisions. And when we redesign how humans and machines work together and learn from one another. I hope that you will unlock the collective potential in your supply chain. I hope that each of you found today's webinar motivating and thought-provoking, and hopefully you will walk away more inspired and ready to take collective action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle, for those great insights, which were kind of initially distressing, but ultimately positive. I'm glad that you ended it on a positive and high note, that we can really address some of these issues we're facing today. This now leads us into the panel discussion portion of our presentation, in which I have the privilege of asking Danielle additional questions. While we are engaged in conversation between the two of us, though, I encourage the audience to continue to submit your own questions by clicking on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of your questions as we can, time permitting, when we get to the audience Q&A portion. So Danielle, based on your research and your interactions with supply chain professionals, help me to better understand what is actually leading to these low levels of engagement and burnout across the community.
Yeah, great question, Bob. I'll tell you, it's amazing the number of people I hear that are either stretched thin or out of energy altogether. In fact, a Gartner survey revealed that nearly 40% of high potential employees are actively seeking new jobs, are looking because they are burnt out today. And studies show that these people are burnt out and stretched out because they are struggling with heavy workloads and stressful jobs. Many of us are in too many meetings, our plates are overloaded. And so a lot of that is leading to the low levels of engagement and burnout that we see across the community. Definitely something that we need to address if we want to unlock the people potential in supply chain.
So I hear you framing this as a morale problem as opposed to the failure of technology to deliver on promised productivity boosts. Because after all, productivity is the number one value proposition of good turning to technology in the first place. But it's more of a morale and people problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's more of how we're looking at our culture and how we're shaping our work processes and utilizing that technology to our benefit. We're not really structuring work to the best of our ability, and therefore we're seeing that we're still bogged down by too much to do, so many tasks, and not really saying no to anything to free up time and space to work on what matters most.
Mm-hmm. To what extent do you find that supply chain organizations are actually actively working to engage, to support, and unlock their people's potential? Are they following your advice already?
Unfortunately, our research shows that many chief supply chain officers have actually reduced their focus on talent engagement and retention in 2024 and as we move into 2025, which is putting productivity and overall performance at risk. But on the other hand, we do see that high-performing supply chain organization and some of those leaders within Gartner's Global Top 25 are more consistently funding people-centric strategies, which gives me hope. So hopefully, as we move into 2025, others will decide to reinvest and prioritize people.
Well, let's be realistic. CSCOs have full plates. They're trying to do more with less, just like everybody. They themselves are overburdened. What should they be doing to actually prioritize? What kinds of things should they be putting first as they seek to unlock people's potentials in the supply chain?
Yeah, great question. Each organization's opportunity areas are going to be different and unique to them based on their business's operating environment and their current strategies. However, I'd say that organizations should prioritize their efforts and resources to unlock individual potential and really secure the talent that they need moving forward. We're going to have to think deeply about how well do we know our people and the knowledge that they have, the skill level that they're at today, the passions and strengths that we're maybe underutilizing or could be utilizing better, and then ensure that we're building and maintaining relationships with them. Of course, a one-size approach is not going to work. So ensuring that we're developing ourselves as well as other supply chain leaders is going to be key in order to support those talents.
I'm curious, throughout this presentation so far, we've been referencing CSCOs, Chief Supply Chain Officers, assuming that they exist in these organizations. To what extent is it important to have a supply chain champion in the C-suite in order to initiate any of these changes you're talking about?
It's very important. We need someone who takes ownership of the supply chain organization and the workforce that is driving so much value for the business. And so having that voice in the C-suite is critical to help move that collective potential forward. Because again, it's not just one individual effort. We really need everyone coming together with diverse and unique perspectives, skill sets to help get the job done.
Yeah. Okay, so I just want to drill down a little bit more on the prioritizing aspect. And that is that for all those CSCOs and the teams who are hyper-focused on driving higher engagement and productivity improvement from their workforces, what is one thing they should keep top of mind as they go forward?
Yeah, I think as we move forward, if we are hyper focused on talent, one of the things that we're also going to have to consider is where does rest play into all the things that we're trying to achieve? How do we not, overstress or overwork our talents? We want to make sure that rest is a proactive approach as well, and not something that we're including as kind of an after effect to keeping the pieces all together. So really ensuring that we make sure that when we say yes to something, we're also saying no or not now, so that we free up the time and space that's needed to fully engage and fully invest the time and energy in those key priorities.
Discussions of this nature very often break down into talking about millennials, Gen X, Y, Z, whatever. I'm just wondering to what extent are generational differences important to consider in terms of making the innovations work that you're talking about here? Or for that matter, do we tend to overemphasize generational differences?
I think it's a mix of both. I think the important thing is we need to look at our workforce holistically. We need to really understand kind of where everyone's at in their stage of the game in terms of their change appetite, their change willingness, and their ability to engage in or adopt some of the new processes or innovations that we're moving forward with. And so really taking our workforce apart, identifying different profiles of talent and then understanding how we can learn from and work together to leverage those unique knowledge areas and skill sets, I think is going to make the biggest difference moving forward, making sure that we don't just treat everyone as equal and work in our own silos, but think about how we can share that information across more freely.
Well, I want to talk more about the silos and the different functions within the organization and how supply chain can present itself as the solution. What is the best way the supply chain can work effectively with HR on these supply chain talent and talent strategies? Because HR from organization to organization changes in terms of whether it's truly an effective setup or it's just a placeholder or whatever. How do you describe that relationship, or what would be the ideal nature of that relationship?
Yeah. For supply chain, the thing is we can't solely rely on HR to do the work for us. We need to be the ones leading the effort and looking for their influence, their collaboration, and their support along the way as we look to design and execute on more people-centric strategies. So that takes us following the CSCO prescription for better talent and business outcomes, which means we've got to take ownership from the start. From there, we need to identify and set the goals that we need in order to progress, and then run initiatives and hold ourselves accountable in terms of partnering, collaborating, and solutioning with HR by our side.
Well, tangential to that, I want to ask you about just human nature. I mean, on one hand, you have described a situation, morale is very low. People in organizations don't feel appreciated. They're overburdened. They're doing the same thing. They're in this rut all over and over again. At the same time, maybe those exact same people are the ones who oppose real change in the organization because people don't like change. So how do you push forward these positive aspects? How do you show these people that change is important, even if it's going to disrupt their day-to-day job? They're afraid of it. They don't want it. They're complaining. I don't know. What tell me about the best approach there.
Anytime we're looking to engage our talents, the best place to start is by listening to them. A lot of times, any of the resistance that our workforce has is because they haven't been heard, and they may be seeing challenges or barriers or even potential solutions that we're not addressing or considering. And so by taking that opportunity to listen, hear them out, ask them some questions, can actually make them more willing, more interested and curious about what payoffs or opportunities could be gained as a result of engaging. And therefore, we might actually gain some momentum to help move these initiatives forward.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Danielle. Thank you for your great presentation and for answering my questions, being patient with me about telling us more about this. I want to now move into the audience Q&A portion of our presentation. So let's bring them into the picture and talk about some of the questions that have already come in. And even as we are answering those, audience members, you are encouraged to keep on submitting your questions by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of your questions as we can, time permitting. So here's one for you. My organization is relatively immature, and we have little resources to put toward unlocking our people's potential. What can we do to make a difference for our people?
Yeah, I would say engage them in the conversation and work with them through co-creation in shaping those talent strategies and then executing those solutions together. Our talents often have a unique perspective, or different skill sets. Some might even have a passion in some of these areas around engagement, diversity, better leveraging technology. And if we can mobilize people to action and unlock our community's potential better by leveraging those individuals as partners and collaborators, we can work together more seamlessly to help drive change and improve our ways of working together.
Yeah, here again, this question of limited resources, which of course every company faces to some degree or another. Get back into the C-suite, you have these competing priorities for resources among the CSCO or the CFO, the CIO, and all those people. So you really have to present yourself up there with your agenda and somehow within that limited budget, make it work. So you got to be a cheerleader in a sense, don't you?
Yeah, you have to be a cheerleader for sure. And I think you've got to lean in to understand where there's going to be some trade-offs and where they see opportunity as well on
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what we might prioritize and optimize our time and effort towards, and what we might actually keep simple or decide to say not now or no to because it's not aligned to our values in the direction that we want to head.
Yeah. This questioner is saying we've invested a great deal in technology advancements for our supply chain. Well, good for you. But and this is what you already had told us, our digital investments are underperforming against expected outcomes. What should we do differently to unlock our technological potential?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many CSCOs and supply chain leaders who are focused on technology implementation and digitalization come to me and say, we're doing training. Why aren't we advancing? Why aren't we getting the ROI that we had hoped for? And part of it is that maybe our resources aren't necessarily geared towards that talent and their work experience, but we may not actually be creating the experience or time and space that talent needs to learn new skills or adopt to the new technology or new work rhythms. So I would say give people the time, change is a transition, free up some space and workload so that they can start using the new technology and actually play with it, experiment, test, and then come together to share some of the learnings, some of the challenges, and the best practices with one another. A lot of times that's happening, in individuals or within teams in pockets, but we're not getting that information across the organization. And if we can dedicate the time and space to that and ensure that that information is getting back to the broader group, hopefully solutions will come out of that and we'll be able to move forward faster together.
Gartner, of course, is well known for creation of the so-called hype cycle when it comes to the adoption of new technologies. And the word hype can have a negative or a positive connotation depending on where you are on that curve. So again, I just want to hammer this point home. It sounds like you are not really blaming technology itself for failing to deliver on these promised productivity advances, are you? You're just saying it is how that technology is being applied by people and how the organization is approaching the technology in the first place.
Yeah, I had a colleague who said we can't think of implementing technology like flipping a switch. We don't just put it into our organizations, roll it out, and then hope to receive the ROI the next day. A lot of times we have to actually change our mindset, change our work rhythms and how we work together to get that return on an investment and see some of the productivity gains as a result of it. So we may need to actually rethink some of the steps that we're taking in order to make the most of that technology.
This questioner is saying, my leadership and I are planning to restructure the supply chain in 2025. What should we be thinking about to set up the new organization successfully? So here's a good, where do we start on this?
Yeah, as you're thinking about the current structure and maybe some of the challenges that exist within, and as you think about the desired future state, we want to be prioritizing those goals of balance, strength, and speed that we talked about today, because they are key characteristics of companies that have successfully reorganized their supply chain. In addition to that, I would say don't just think about eliminating people or moving reporting lines around. Really think about the work that individuals and teams are doing today and consider changes to how we're leveraging those talents, their unique skill sets, passions, and interests, and understand how we can make the most of those, whether it's in their existing roles and teams or whether it's in other parts of our supply chain, so that we get the most from that talent.
I think that this question might need a little bit of context. They're saying, can I unlock the people's potential in the supply chain without taking a collective approach? And I think that maybe the direction of the question is, what if nobody will work with me on doing this? Can I just go out and do it myself if I can't get cooperation from other parts of the organization? Will a non-collective approach work, or is it absolutely essential to making any of this work, Danielle?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to move the needle very far
Yeah,
all on
figured.
our own.
Mm-hmm.
A collective effort is required because each individual that we hire, that we engage with, the communities that we build inside and outside the organization, and the technology we implement contribute more together than they do apart. However, we may not need to get everyone on board all at once. Think about who your supporters might be. Think about who's skeptical and put an engagement plan in place for how you're going to hear them out, how you're going to provide them with the insights or the data that they need to start to move the dial. And then maybe we pilot or experiment in small pockets to show progress and demonstrate how we can be successful together.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how a company can go about rethinking its current structures? Does it involve a reduction of layers of management? Does it mean changing the reporting structure? Does it mean more direct reports? What more? How does this actually manifest itself in reality?
When we think about, re-examining our org structures, I think we first have to determine why we want to reorganize. And often organizations will just say, well, it's not working today, or we're not getting the gains that we had hoped to see. And so therefore, I think first understanding kind of the root cause of why we want to change, and then determining, okay, is it our reporting lines that aren't set up right? Is it the operating model, because work is not flowing, how is expected? There's bottlenecks or roadblocks in that system. Or even looking at the governance. There might be some quick, simple wins within our governance that we can change in order to make efficiencies, in order to make workflow more seamlessly across teams and communities.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for your great answers to those questions, as well as your presentation and your answers to my questions as well. Unfortunately, we only have time for one final question. And here it is. Following today's webinar, how does one start to unlock the people's potential in the supply chain?
Yeah, for CSCOs and supply chain leaders who are looking to start to unlock the people potential in supply chain, I would say they've got to begin by prioritizing their people, their unique talents and abilities, with the mindset and motivation that humans are amplifiers of supply chain's digital and physical assets. And when CSCOs and other leaders value their people and put them first in the conversation, they will be able to harness the collective potential of individuals, communities, and technology, all working together to drive productivity improvements in support of more sustainable and long-term growth. And I realize, Bob, it's a collective effort and approach, but it's with humans at the heart of making it all work together better, faster, stronger, more agile, so that we're hopefully more resilient than we were before.
Well, this has been a great discussion, and it's such a great time to have that discussion, because we are told constantly about the productivity gains that come from technology, Industry 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. I don't know how many more point O's there can be in order to realize this, and yet it's falling short, and we're learning from you, Danielle, as to why and what needs to be done about that. Thank you so much for your great insights. And audience, I want to thank you for your attendance and your great questions as well. Once again, though, I do want to remind you that you can meet and talk more with Danielle and a whole slew of Gartner analysts on all subjects related to supply chain at the Gartner Supply Chain Symposium and Expo, May 5th through 7th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and May 19th through 21st, 2025 in Barcelona, Spain. Learn more by going to gartner.com/conf/SC. Register with the code GartnerSCB25 for an exclusive discount. Don't miss that event. I'm looking forward to it. Supply Chain Brain will be there. We hope to see you there. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.